Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Wednesday morning. It is the Earthmaster out here. January 29th, 2025 is the date, 10:12 a.m. That's California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 2.6 across the western Turkey area. A little bit of swarming going on there. Nothing big, just a couple of smaller earthquakes. Also some movement here just off the Cascadia subduction zone, a 4.2 earthquake. A lot of inland earthquake activity here recently, including a three-pointer up there across Yellowstone. This was from yesterday here. Let me see what the USGS is sticking with as far as the magnitude goes. 3.7, so they've downgraded this a little bit since overnight. Added a couple more of the smaller earthquakes that they normally wouldn't include. But it is drawing a little bit of focus there across the Yellowstone area. And a lot of people asking what's going on at Yellowstone. Well, they had an earthquake, a little 3.7. It's not a large earthquake. Yellowstone has seen earthquakes of this magnitude and higher in the past. I've covered this quite a bit here throughout my studies and investigations there as far as any increasing activity across Yellowstone supervolcano. So right now we just have a swarm of earthquakes following that three-pointer in the microquake range. Nothing picking up. This is kind of a weak earthquake swarm. I've seen earthquake swarms here throughout the years that I've been studying this that is having twos and threes in the 50 to 60 multitude range out here on any given day during those swarms. So it's been a little while since we've had any type of earthquake swarming across Yellowstone. And this earthquake appears to have struck just outside the Yellowstone caldera over here around Madison River, maybe Purple Mountain area. We can see that discreetly here on the map, which is, again, going to be probably right around the Purple Mountain area outside the Yellowstone caldera. The Yellowstone caldera supervolcano, obviously it's going to be bigger than your typical volcano caldera, but there it is in the black outline. That includes Yellowstone Lake out there as well. So this event did not strike within the caldera, and as I mentioned last night here in my update video, this is a sign of just general strain out here against the plate boundary, the west coast. And I say that because we have verification earthquakes that happened in Idaho prior to the arrival of the expected strain that takes place here in the plate tectonic world. Remember, Idaho had a four-pointer over here just previous. It's been 2 days now, but it was a day previous to yesterday's event. Yellowstone sits up here against the western edge of the North American craton. It's a relatively stable piece of land that's been, well, it's been stable and undeformed for millions of years as the pressure and transfer of pressure deforms the rest of the area around that North American craton. And the pressure obviously hit Yellowstone area as far as the strain goes from the general movement that we've seen out here across the west coast. The 4.1 in Idaho, or 4.2, excuse me, a day prior to the Yellowstone activity is a good indicator of tectonic strain here. This doesn't have anything to do with magma or anything coming up to the surface. And if you think about it, if this was indeed related to pressurization and magma below the ground, common sense would tell us that we would be seeing elevated inflation going on, right? That would be happening. Here's just one seismograph station there around the area of interest. There's Yellowstone Lake. There's the seismograph station. Here is the GPS information, right? This is the vertical displacement, something that I show you a lot at when we're looking at volcanoes in Iceland or Kilauea volcano. Vertical displacement. 2008, we were going up and up and up. We had a decent earthquake swarm at, I think it was 2008, 2009. That sparked a lot of fear because we were going up. We were seeing a big earthquake swarm at the end of 2008. Lots of earthquakes, hundreds of earthquakes a day. And man, that sparked a fear-mongering you would not believe. Every YouTuber and every social media influencer were jumping in on this. Look what's going to happen. Yellowstone's going to blow. Well, it didn't blow. Okay, and since then, we've gone down. There's 2008, the earthquake swarm went down. In 2015, That was what I was talking about last night, where we've seen another earthquake swarm that lasted for a couple months as the vertical displacement goes up. Now, since 2015, we really haven't seen a major earthquake swarm and no notable uptick in terms of inflation. It's going down. So, when you put two and two together, if this was something related to magma, we would be talking about this area on the rise, right? But it's not. It's not on the rise. I already see a bunch of people out there on the media. Major earthquake hits Yellowstone. A 3.7 is a major earthquake? Okay. So I'm just here to discuss the facts, and the facts speak for themselves that this is stress related, and that it showed a day previous all the earthquake activity in Idaho. When you get movement out here, obviously the strain can build up in any general direction. And in this area, looks like it's been hitting the Montana area, and now most recently the northwestern area of Wyoming, which is Yellowstone National Park. But again, not related to magma coming up to the surface, folks. And if you want to believe that, that's fine. There's lots of social media videos floating around on this, but yeah, crazy. So I'll show you guys here real quick, okay? We'll go back here in time. See if we can bring up, this one has a historical layout as well. 2008 towards December. I think that's it. Let me see. Yes. That is it. So this is in 2008. I don't remember exactly when that earthquake swarm started. I think it was a couple days prior to this. But as you can see, this earthquake swarm was a big one. If you open up the Yellowstone seismograph stations and seen something like this, and you got a decent earthquake swarm going on here. That's a big earthquake swarm that struck 2008 in the beginning of 2009 with multiple hundreds of 2s and 3s out there. But at the time, we were seeing vertical displacement, as I just showed you guys on the graph. We're not seeing that now. And since then, it's gone down. But there was literally hundreds of earthquakes, maybe even above the couple hundred range that was taking place across the Yellowstone Lake here. That's where the epicenter was. And some of these other quakes, the big ones, those showed up obviously across the seismograph stations. And those were in the 2 and 3 range. I'll show you guys here real quick. We're going to go 1.0 and above. And I just want to go back to that time frame and show you guys real quick, okay? 2008. I don't want to go back too far, so we're just going to go to November of that year up until 2009, and that should cover it, January 29th, because it ended roughly about second week of January. So we'll go over here to Yellowstone, and I'll take a gander here, see what we have, right? It's probably going to be a lot, because there was indeed a lot of earthquakes there. 822 earthquakes in a month's time period there that I showed you guys. But there was probably a lot more than that. Discreetly here, 702 earthquakes with that earthquake swarm that the USGS reported. But, if you look at these events here, just on this day alone, every single earthquake, including these smaller ones, there's probably at least 700 earthquakes on this day alone. Not to mention all the previous days here. If we go back and look at, previous events, look at that. That's a lot of earthquake activity. So they didn't go back and counted every single one of these little spikes, which are indeed earthquakes. So that number here, you could probably multiply that times 3. But nonetheless, that was still a decent earthquake swarm. And we had some good magnitudes in there as well with a bunch of 3s. The largest in that sequence was a 3.9. And as you can see, many 3s, many 2s, lots and lots of 2s here. And Yellowstone did not blow, folks. I don't like to fearmonger Yellowstone. It's one of those things that I have an itch about because, any kind of earthquake activity, some people take advantage of that and try to fearmonger the people out there, the watchers, you guys. And I don't like it. I just try to stay focused on relevant facts and the information that's provided out here. That was a decent swarm. That got me. Well, I was interested in Yellowstone before that, but this really tuned my senses in terms of studying Yellowstone and the supervolcano itself and how things work down below the surface here. But there's no elevated seismic unrest today, and a 3.7 earthquake is we have at least maybe one or two of those a year on average across Yellowstone. So this little sequence of events here, as far as the smaller quakes, they're just reporting it. Now they're just reporting it because it's bringing attention. National, I can't say national, but some agencies, news agencies picking up on it. And of course, a lot of social media clickbait viewers, not viewers, but content creators, so to speak, are reporting this as a major quake at Yellowstone, and it's not. It's a typical earthquake that can happen out here, followed up by a sequence of smaller, what I believe is aftershock sequences right now, with no sign of any elevated unrest there across Yellowstone in terms of magma coming up from below. It doesn't happen that way. This is strain related out here across the Intermountain West region, up against the Yellowstone. Just happened to strike out here, but over the past 30 days, I think we've seen a number of earthquakes out here across the Intermountain West area, Idaho. It's only a matter of time before a three-pointer struck over here around some fault systems that are, due to the general plate tectonics out here. This has nothing to do with the magma chamber expanding or anything coming up. This is just strain out here against these mountain ranges. And might even see, I think we've seen some in between here. That's the last 30 days of earthquake activity. This is not a magma trail leading to Yellowstone. It's just... I try to just move on, but at the same time, I feel like I'm responsible to clarify what's going on out here, since a lot of people look for information. A lot of people come to me for information when it comes to facts. I've been studying this stuff for many years. I got a degree in geology, seismology, physical science is my main study, and that's purely plate tectonics out here. I'm still under the weather a little bit in terms of my voice. So if you hear a cough drop in my mouth, that's what I have. I do have a cough drop in my mouth, so hopefully it won't come about in a coughing fit. But stress in terms of plate tectonics out here, and it's very visible on the 30-day chart, all up against there. In fact, you can, on any given month, you can draw a line from the Garlock Fault shear zone all the way up through the mountain ranges here, where we expect strain to build, right, just due to the general strain out here across the west coast, moves inland, all the way up through Yellowstone into Montana. So if all these earthquakes were happening just specifically at Yellowstone, then I'd be saying, yes, something's going on. And if we were seeing the GPS displacements go up instead of down, something's going on. But it's not. General strain out here across the west coast and the Intermountain West areas here. You can pretty much draw a line there, all the way half a circle almost. Nothing to do with magma. Purely got to do with the straight plate stress out here. And that includes California, obviously. Prior to, let me see what we got, 4.2. It's off the Cascadia subduction zone. But in general, we've been seeing a little bit of tremor out here. Let me bring that up. Yeah, see a little bit of tremor out here downstream into the Cascadia on pretty much a broad scale out here from Northern California northward. That in itself, when we see tremor activity, adds further strain upstream. And also we see periodic fracture earthquakes up here at the surface level, similar to what we're seeing out in the Cascadia Basin area. That's not a big earthquake. It says 6 miles deep here for a 4.2. But this area is under quite a bit of strain because of all the tremor activity recently and the amount of stress that's been being built up out here across the Cascadia. 325 years this month since we've seen the big earthquake 9.0. That's what they're claiming on 9.0 out there. And it's legit. There's studies to find out when earthquakes struck, because these big earthquakes displace the sediments out here across the not only the ocean floor out here, but you see these landslides that take place as well. And not to mention the tsunami deposits get moved inland, and the droppage of the land and all that stuff. I firmly believe, and I've studied this myself, the accuracy of the ages of the Cascadia subduction zone earthquakes out here. They happen on, roughly between 250 and up to 500 years on average, but also at the same time, there's partial ruptures that take place, southern segment, even a central segment or northern segment. Not really, I don't expect any partial segment up here anytime soon. The slip rate is much higher out here across the southern end in terms of accumulated strain. Cascadia subduction zone has been elevated out here in terms of tremor. We've seen a lot of Gorda ridges activity. This is a spreading seafloor center, adding strain out here at the southern end specifically. The Blanco fracture zone has been quite active, adding to even further strain out here across the southern end due to the strike slip boundary here, pointing in this general direction. So, if anything, I'm definitely watching the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. But there is strain showing up here across this northern segment as well. Tremor activity leading to back pressurization here with some crustal quakes taking place. Not to mention the activity around Seattle here recently. I've been seeing a little bit of swarming going on up there. But, it actually a lot more so than normal here in the last 30 days. But who knows? I mean, maybe there's enough stress out here for a full unzip, but that would be a worst case scenario. All right, so moving on past that and past Yellowstone, stress related out there, folks. Until we see the GPS go up in terms of inflation, that is on the back burner. Nothing to worry about. And that's a very small earthquake swarm. But it's an earthquake swarm, right? Making some news out there, but nothing big to worry about. A little bit of movement out here around the Sheldon Contiguous Study Area, formerly known as the National Antelope Refuge. I was out there a few years back studying the earthquake swarm that took place out here. A much bigger earthquake swarm than what we're seeing right now. Just a couple of small earthquakes. A lot of lava out there, obsidian flows, and some older, I'm sure, volcanic tunnels underneath there. These earthquakes striking just at or below the surface level. A couple smaller quakes here across Northern California here from yesterday. Nothing major going on. The Bay Area, pretty quiet. Southern California, 2 earthquakes from yesterday in terms of 2.5 and above. Today, general small microquake activity. But I am watching this right here, the Garlock Fault shear zone northward along this. There's a couple different segments of faults here. Been showing some elevated activity here recently. But in general, Southern California has been active over the past few months and in the last couple days in terms of noticeable stress signs out here across the Garlock Fault shear zone, which is right here, but just off of it to the north, indicative of some pressure transfer coming up from the south, as expected, and a lot of strain here against the southern end of the San Andreas Fault. You can see these stress quakes just off of it where it bends. That is concerning, obviously, but nothing big has struck yet, but the signs are there in terms of potential megaquake activity. I consider anything above an 8 a megaquake, right? And this area is they say it's primed. A lot of people saying that this could produce an 8.1 with a full rupture here, a full rip of the southern end of the San Andreas Fault, which hasn't seen any activity in 300 years, as far as full release here. So just be on guard. Got to make sure you guys have some type of plan. No major swarms out here. A little bit of movement along the Imperial Fault. Nothing on the Brawley seismic zone or the, there's a couple smaller quakes on the San Andreas Fault today, but nothing of any noteworthy value. That's today anyway. Texas, Oklahoma, got your typical movement out there in the oil fields. Really nothing of any major interest going on out there for now. Got, some activity stirred up across the East Coast here recently. Another earthquake outside the Maine region, a 2.0. This area had a 3.8 a couple days ago. it can see some larger activity in the 5 range, upper 5 range, and higher. So just a little key indicator of that this region is still very much alive and will produce some big earthquakes. It's been hundreds of years since a big one out here as well. Hundreds of years everywhere, it seems like, huh? The New Madrid seismic zone, San Andreas Fault, Cascadia, eastern portions of the country here. We're living in that time period here in the future now, where we could be experiencing a large earthquake across any of these areas. Hundreds of years have passed, and regular intervals for large earthquakes can vary out here, but a lot of them are around the 300 and 400 year range. Right where we're at right now in 2025. Who would have thought? So just be on guard. New Madrid seismic zone, 1 earthquake, 1.4 from early this morning. Nothing big going on there for now, but no doubt we'll definitely see some big earthquake activity in the future. Alaska, some 4s out there across the Aleutian Trench. Really no major migration here along the that plate boundary, the subduction zone. I am watching it, though, because it has been slowly working its way this way. Higher slip rate as you go west along that plate boundary. And if you look at the last 30 days, this is kind of a seismic gap area with most of the movement there around where we're seeing the 4s eastward along the plate boundary up into Alaska. So this little section right here could see some earthquake activity soon. It should see some anyway. It should fill in. These little seismic gap zones normally don't stay quiet for long. 2.7 or 2.1 there on the southeastern zone here of the Kilauea volcano. That is still currently on a pause status. Let me check out the deformation charts here today. Starting to go up a little bit. Here's the last 2 days. There's the pause in the eruption. Is that right? Yeah, 27th to the 29th. You can see it more prominently here on the past week. The pause. Now we're going back up. Good possibility here. We'll go one more day or so, and then we'll see another eruption across the Kilauea volcano, which again is still at a pause. I'm not seeing any indicator that we're resuming the eruption right now. We'll check out the summit cam. Still got some volcanic gases out there. It's been a rinse and repeat cycle here, so this next event will be number 8 in terms of the pause and unpause of the eruption here across that crater wall of lava lake up there at Kilauea volcano. Just nothing major going on there for now. Just a rinse and repeat cycle of episodes of eruption. The rest of the model, or rest of the globe out here, let's see what we got. Quieter conditions here today across this area. This is very typical on any given day. I call that the crunch zone because that's where pretty much all the plates tend to meet one another. All the arrows are pointing in this general fashion. That's why these guys are always seeing earthquakes compared to California. We don't have all the arrows pointing together. We have them pointing away from each other or side by side. That's why it takes hundreds of years for earthquakes to build up out here compared to, 30 or 40 years for big ones out here across this area of the crunch zone. I like to call it the crunch zone. It makes sense. All the earthquakes out there, just kind of a key indicator of what's going on with the general plate motion. So nothing big, just general typical earthquake activity out there. Nothing going on across Japan for now. This whole area has gone quiet in the last 24 hours with most of the earthquake activity ramping up here across this region of the world. Got a little earthquake coming in right now to Northern California, Petrolia. That is a 2-pointer. Somewhere up here, the earthquake 3D globe is showing that anyway. This is the EMSC model showing a 2.2 there across the Petrolia area. Let me refresh that, make sure I got it. There we go. I'm just I'm a little happy here that they decided to include some of these smaller quakes now. Before I started making a big deal about it, they were never reporting these 1s or even low small grade 2s. That's why it looks like there's been more earthquake activity out here because they included the 1s out here now. But if we were to go back the last 30 days, I don't think they included all of those 1s. They just started adding them on here in the last couple days. Most of it's lots of twos. There's a couple ones in there, but we've had way more earthquake activity than what they're showing here. I mean, I watch these graphs like a hawk. This is a Petrolia station, which is positioned right about around this area, and it's going to pick up ones and even some smaller quakes, and they have been happening a lot and nothing being reported. It's just up until a couple days ago they started finally showing some of these smaller quakes out here. And that's got to watch that. Every earthquake, say if you have 1,000 ones out here, it means something's going on. The chances for seeing something bigger increase as you have more twos, more threes, and so on. This is still just a very dynamic area, whether you want to call it aftershock sequences or just still further straining of the area. I like to call it that because we've seen earthquake activity prior to the 7-pointer. We're seeing earthquake activity following the 7-pointer from last year that struck in this area. And I just think it's still further pressurization here of the region. Got to watch the southern end of the Cascadia. That is up here, I think, for a partial rupture. All right, let's see what we got here for anything else going on. Pretty quiet out here across the rest of the globe. So keep an eye out here. Things look like they're picking up across this area of the eastern area of the Pacific Plate. Now, space weather activity. Let's see here. We got this massive area out here in the northeastern quadrant of the sun. Got a better view of it today in terms of complexity. And I'd say it's moderately complex out here. It's a massive area of coverage, but if you look at the visible disk here, it's an older sunspot. And if I remember right, I can't remember the exact names of these last time they were out here, but I believe it's those former sunspots that had probably come around the sun a couple times. Still got some complexity within there. It looks like a sunspot group with different names, and main areas I think are going to be this northern region to watch. There's a lot of close proximity, different deep colors in here indicating that structure of magnetic complexity. Also, maybe this area back here, but I'm kind of watching this area on the northern segment. So that would be number 3977 up here. That looks fairly complex out of all of them. So flare threat, they don't have it on here, but I've raised mine up to a 10% chance, 55% chance for an M flare. X flare is at 10% for me. I don't think they've updated it yet. They're still showing some lower models, but we are noticing a little bit of sizzling going on here with some spikiness indicating complexity before any sparking takes place, so to speak. Got a little C flare activity and a couple M flares in the last 24 hours. So we'll continue to watch that sunspot group as it comes into a more Earth-directed view. I think our flare threat should be a little bit higher than what he's got posted here. That's why I decided to implement my own flare threat forecast. Nothing major going on the Aurora forecast either for now. Things pretty quiet. Storm Prediction Center out here. We got severe weather event for day 2. This is going to be on Thursday. So tomorrow, tornado threat down there across your typical area for this time of year. 5% surrounded by a 2%. Got some wind and a little bit of hail threats out there as well, but primarily it looks to be a tornado potential out there. The numerical models here are pointing towards this region with some ample dew points, colder air, and got that low pressure trough here pulling up that moisture. There's your severe weather right there for Thursday and the Friday. California's got a storm system coming in Friday and into the weekend. Pretty decent moisture content coming in for California. This is aimed right at me. We could pick up easily a couple inches of rainfall from this event or midweek next week. But this weekend we do have some rain as well. But that's a pretty hefty rainfall accumulation rate there across my neck of the woods here in Chico, California, where it's been awfully dry here in January. But the pattern out here looks decent, and that includes for Southern California as well. Going to get in on some rainfall. This storm right here looks like a hurricane, fairly tightly wound low pressure system This, I believe, will get caught up and move directly into Southern California. Total accumulated precipitation runs out here. Yeah, decent out here. We could be talking about 4 inches of rainfall just with this model run here over Northern California. Sierra Nevada mountains, a foot or more higher, 24 inches of rainfall. It looks like here across Lake Tahoe. But again, snow levels, I'm not quite certain what snow levels are going to be. Yeah, these guys are in the white. Not white like this, but white above all of the other ones. So we're talking about 4 feet of snow or more up across the Sierra Nevada mountains. That's exactly what we need. Because the West Coast out here has been high and dry and on fire. And it's been one of the, I don't recall, in fact, living out here, the majority of my life, that we've ever had a January so dry. I only picked up 1/4 of an inch of rainfall for January. So that has allowed the drought conditions to really amplify out here across the California region and Oregon. These guys are super dry in the extreme range. Extreme drought, as high as you can get. That's at the surface level. Just below the surface, still got some heavy drought conditions out here. So hopefully we will make a dent in this area over the next couple of storm systems here. Got some decent chances of precipitation out here. Maybe some extreme precipitation, and I'll take it. I mean, it comes with a little bit of flooding, but hey, we can divert water and we can move water around. I'm pretty safe here where I'm at. It's never actually flooded directly here at my place. I mean, my neighbor's field here to me, yeah, it gets like a pond and a lake, but never had to worry about breaking out the water pump and draining water out of somewhere around my area. But hey, we got some rain coming in. I'm very thankful and very happy for that. So we got 2 earthquakes there, California, 2.2 and a 2.5. Both of those should be showing up. Prime example right here of how to read a seismograph station. Obviously, the 2.5 is going to show up much stronger, right? There's your 2.2. If you bring down that 2.5, that's going to look like a more stronger earthquake. But it also depends on how close you are to the seismograph station there as far as these earthquakes taking place. Petrolia is just right over here. But it does look like we got a little bit of earthquake activity coming into that region. Keep an eye there on the West Coast. In general, the pattern here today has switched from a more active pattern here across Japan back to the eastern areas here of the Pacific Plate, Northern Plate section as well. So watch the West Coast. Pressure and strain working its way inland in the Yellowstone has absolutely nothing to do with magma. Far as the 5 close approach asteroids here, see if we got anything of noteworthy value. Really nothing coming in right now. I'm still going to do a more thorough update on 2024 YR2, I think, or YR6. I can't remember. It's an asteroid that's coming here in about 8 years. That's going to pass really close to Earth. It jumped on the Torino scale, the impact scale, up to a 3. So there's a little concern, a 1 in 83 chance, one of the highest chances I've seen in quite a while for that asteroid to impact the planet. It's supposedly up to a 300-foot size asteroid, but we'll cover that a little bit more in detail. Got my plate fairly full today. Spring semester has started here at college, so I got to get on that and stay busy. But for now, Yellowstone is good. Doesn't look anything like what we had in 2008, 2009. That was a lot of earthquake swarming. But a little small 3.7 is not a major earthquake at Yellowstone. I'm just putting that out there. Have a good one. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening, folks. Unless something major happens, right? Stay safe.